You're the most cold-blooded man I've ever seen.
How can you have any meat if you don't eat your pudding?
The Tommy Boyds Show.
Back and to the left. Yeah.
Escape in here.
Cabin doors to automatic. Morning. Look. If it doesn't work, fix it, okay? And the way we drive around on the roads of Britain is there a man, woman, child or hedgehog out there who's prepared to say it works? No. But, if it works, don't fix it. If it works, don't fix it, do more of it. Free call 0500 10 53 89. There is a section of the motoring public who, every single time they struggle to get the key in the door of their faded green Riley Elf in order to spend 20 minutes driving no more than 1.5 miles for no good reason whatsoever, every time they do that, never getting out of third gear, every time they do that, they are a danger to everybody else. And we know who we're talking about here, don't we? We're talking about people who took their driving test at least 30 years ago, before they had roundabouts and motorways, before they had cars that could do more than 60 miles an hour. These are people who learnt to drive in cars that had little indicators that popped out from the side of the car. Free call 0500 10 53 89. My point is simple, it's this. We don't allow these people to use the buses and the trains when everybody else wants to, so why do we allow them to use the roads when everybody else wants to? We have and we accept, and they, for the most part...
As well as those security measures bearing down...
Was that Tony? Is he trying to get on my show again? Free call 0500 10 53 89. My proposition is this. Old people are comfortable with the idea that they're not allowed on the buses until everybody else has got to work and got to school. And they're comfortable with the idea that they're not allowed on the buses or the trains when everybody else is beavering to get away from home, away from school, and get home. So why do we allow them out on the roads during rush hours? My proposition's straightforward, and I think it's long overdue. It deserves serious thought, and maybe you can help me build a full policy which we can send on to the ministry. I say that if you're over 50, if you took your test more than 30 years ago, you shouldn't object to being confined to using our roads between 10 and 12 in the morning and 1 and 3 in the afternoon. Provided, as most people do, you live in an area where the traffic has largely cleared by about 7 or 7:30 in the evening, then old people would be allowed out to potter until about 10 o'clock. But they shouldn't really be allowed out after that, because one has to ask the question, what are elderly people doing on the roads in the wee small hours of the morning if they're not up to no good? Free call 0500 10 53 89. Obviously, if they have an emergency to get to, such as they need a prescription or new batteries, then they can get down to the chemist before the 10 o'clock starting up time. It works on public transport, and it works well. Bus conductors and bus drivers and some train ticket guards do report that 1 or 2 people with their passes try to use trains and buses too early, and they ask, am I too early? They're called the twirlies. We know about them, they're well known. And the authorities often turn a blind eye if they think that the need is genuine. They don't want to cause distress, and we wouldn't want to cause distress with this idea. But we do need, don't we, to look at every possible way by which we can help the traffic flow in Britain. And we're not just talking about the quantity of cars that are on the road nowadays, we're talking about, frankly, the quality of some of the driving. Because the simple fact of the matter is that somebody who doesn't have to get somewhere in a rush shouldn't be on the road during rush hour. And they haven't got anything to rush about for, have they? It'll improve road safety as well as the flow of the traffic. And it's easy to enforce, I think. If you're under 50, you get a sticker on the back of your car, which would be less discriminating than to have a sticker on the back of the car if you're over 50, which would rather tend to make you stand out as being approaching your geriatric period. Free call 0500 10 53 89. Now, this should not be seen as a penalty. This should be seen as something which people seek. So in return for restricted times of use of the road,
older drivers would get privileged parking, for example, privileged parking, possibly privileged rates of road tax, privileged rates of insurance, possibly even privileged petrol prices, and privileged parking at supermarkets, hospitals, crematoria. Free call 0500 10 53 89. I'm Tommy Boyd. This is Talk Radio. There is a good argument for listening.
Tommy Boyd Show. 10:53, 10:89 a.m. Talk Radio.
We do need to limit the times that codgers are on the roads, or, just as we do with bicycles and buses, perhaps we could provide them with their own lanes, an old lane, perhaps, running up the middle of the road, which would reduce people's opportunity for crazy overtaking. Doug calls now from London. Doug, you're on Talk Radio. Good afternoon.
Major Tom, you should be Rice Marshal Tom. You're a control freak, mate. That's what you are. The old are, in fact, better drivers. I'm a cabbie, so I know about the roads. And I've heard you before saying the young geezers, the road ragers and the nutters who are zooming round, they're actually, not causing the accidents, but they're having to get involved because of oldies. Is that what you said about a week or two back?
In the first place, Doug, being a taxi driver rather disqualifies you from having any objective views on the transport issue.
Well, you only go with bus and train, so what do you know about it? You was talking about when you're driving your kids, you couldn't even concentrate. Well, that's not much of an example, is it?
The issues that we're talking about here, Doug, are very important ones. They're road safety, and they're also traffic flow.
Yeah, but can I mention that you...
Now, I know, I'm very well aware, Doug, that taxi drivers prefer traffic jams
to keep the meter going. Wrong again, because we work on a set rate from A to B, so that's wrong for a
Why
start.
don't you switch the meter off then? No,
we don't have a meter. We work on a set rate from A to B. So you're wrong there, aren't you?
But I thought you said you were a cab driver.
No, I'm a mini cab driver, which means you get a set rate. It means you don't go round the houses. We quote you, London Airport to Central London, whatever.
Oh, it's you lot. You make your prices up, don't you?
Whatever you want to say, mate.
Well, it's true, isn't it?
Yeah, but listen.
How come it's always £4.60, so you've got to give a fiver?
Talk about driving, Tom.
How come it's £7.20?
We're very competitive and we go great value for money.
Answer the question.
Are you giving value for money by not allowing me to get my argument in?
£7.20. Why is it always £7.20, so you've got to give £8?
Well, you could talk about why do you charge your advertisers certain rates. I bet they could argue on that, couldn't they, on Talk Radio?
I'll answer that question if you'll answer mine.
Well, it's called rounding up, rounding down, isn't it?
Rounding up, rounding down. So you choose a fee from absolutely nowhere, which then pressurises your customer into rounding it up to the nearest pound.
Tom, a bad driver always looks at other drivers. You're always talking about other drivers, right?
You're thieves and charlatans.
Yeah, but a good driver notices his own driving first before he notices other people.
What test did you have to take to be a driver?
I was taught by a good old driver, defensive driving. And the worst aspect of driving on the roads of Britain is people don't know how to turn right.
Have you done the knowledge?
I've done A knowledge, and I know...
A knowledge?
Yeah. I know enough.
A knowledge?
Well, listen, we don't have to do the Freemasonry cobblers that they have to do for the black cabs, right?
What's the best way from Haringey then down to Crystal Palace?
Well, head south for a start.
Oh, good. You are a professional.
Yeah, you go to...
You use a compass, do you?
Yeah, go to Manor House.
Or do you navigate by the stars?
I get you there safely. You don't know because you only talk about other people instead of looking at yourself. The first thing about a good driver is he notices his own driving, not someone else. And why do the insurance companies penalise young drivers if the oldies are so bleeding useless?
The problem that Doug has, of course, is that he can't see his nose in front of his face. He ought to recognise that if he is a professional driver, anything that can be done to improve road safety and the flow of traffic on the roads has to be given a serious second thought. And that's what we're going to do between now and 4 o'clock. We're wondering whether there is a need to limit the time that old drivers are on the roads. Dorothy calls from Edinburgh. Dorothy, you're on Talk Radio. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm 55 and I would like to say, having a contact in the job, that I think any police road safety office in the country will tell you it is not actually old people who are causing the accidents. I appreciate they drive slowly and it's a bit of a nuisance and all the rest of it, but if you look at road safety accident statistics, these are not the people who are causing the accidents. It's young people and company reps and people like that. I also have to agree with the taxi driver that I think you're a bit of a control freak.
You have to remember that sales reps are doing essential work.
Well, they certainly are, but it doesn't give them carte blanche to scream around all over the place.
Whereas old people like you could very easily hop on a bus.
Old people like me, listen, I drive a highly powered motorbike. I take it all over the country and everywhere. I'm far from senile.
But for what? What purpose do you do that for?
Well, for leisure and pleasure.
Joyriding.
It's pleasure.
Joyriding.
Tourings. Joyriding. So I'm a joyrider
I don't
because I
think it should
dare
be
to ride a
allowed.
motorbike. I'm over
I think
50.
that if somebody can't prove that they're going from A to B for a specific purpose, they should be fined. I'm afraid the days when people take cars out for a spin are long and gone.
Oh, my God. Well, you tell the government. I think you're absolutely crazy.
No, I'm sorry. Motoring is a chore. It is a job for an awful lot of people. And people like you who are out clogging up the roads, enjoying the scenery, are holding this country's economy back.
Oh, I'm
through.
absolutely flabbergasted by what you're saying.
Think it through.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Think it through. I'm afraid the days of Toad Hall and his motoring pursuits are dead and buried. And before you're dead and buried, I think you ought to look at the pleasures of taking the bus.
I think there'll be a lot of people listening to this programme that would wish you were dead and buried. Thank you and goodbye.
Well, 3-call-0500 10 53 89. Julia calls from London. You're on Talk Radio. Julia, good afternoon.
Hi, Tommy.
Julia.
I just completely agree with what you're saying.
Thank you.
I was in a car crash yesterday at 12:24. Now, the guy who pulled out in front of me from a give way was in his 50s. And if he was only allowed on the road between 10 and 12 and 1 and 3, I wouldn't have been in that crash.
You would be fine today. Okay.
I'd be fine, whereas I'm sat here with a neck brace on, with whiplash, back injury, arm injury. Thanks to him.
Julia, thank you for your call.
You're welcome.
I think that's the argument one. It's a question of how we organise it. Should the curfew against old people on the roads driving operate from 10 till 12 in the morning with a window so that they can nip out for some bread and pet food between 12 and 1? And then again, the curfew to operate, permitting them on the roads from 1 until 3, but they do need to be off the roads before the school run begins, and we don't need them back on the road until everybody is tucked up with their beans on toast watching EastEnders. So I would suggest 7:30, and they certainly don't need to be out after 10 o'clock at night. If they are out after 10 o'clock at night, one has to ask the question, and this might well be another issue, why? Free call 0500 10 53 89. I'm Tommy Boyd. This is Talk Radio. There's a good argument for listening. There's still time for you to register to take part in Where Am I with 1-to-1, the national network for free national calls. There's £700 in the prize fund, and it can be yours if you can identify which town or city our 1-to-1 caller's making his free national call from. My clue is this. He says, I am visiting St. Stephen's Church. Where am I? The Where Am I competition hotline number is 0894 222 333. The call will cost just 25 pence. We don't need your answer, just your name and number, and I could be talking to you before 4 o'clock. 0894 222 333. It's 3, and Mike calls from Surrey. Mike, we're talking transport. Good afternoon.
Hi, yeah. Well, I think in the Tommy Boyd league table of stupid ideas, this one's pretty near the top. It's up there with John Lennon was a Cockney and Jesus Christ went to live in Japan. I mean, have you ever driven during the rush hour?
Jesus Christ allegedly did go and live in Japan after he returned from the dead. That's fairly well documented in magazines. Right. I'm only passing on what other people are saying there. And
well, I thought it was silly.
Well, you should get out more and read more, shouldn't you? You've got a closed mind.
I haven't got a closed mind.
Have you ever read a book? What was the last book you read?
Do you really want to know?
Yes.
Hang on. I'm still reading it. It's taking a bit of getting through. It's a book by a bloke called James Elroy. But no one's going to be interested in that, are they? I have read a few books anyway. And I'd never heard that Jesus went to live in Japan before, or that John Lennon was a Cockney.
Yeah, well, it's currently widely reported that there is a shrine in Japan which dates back nearly 2,000 years, and the shrine was to a European man with fair brown hair who related some incidents in his life which are similar to those led by Jesus.
Wouldn't it have taken him most of his lifetime to get there in those days? I mean, Israel to Japan's a fair old trek, isn't it?
Well, Marco Polo did it in about 3 months.
Is that all?
Yeah.
So that was considerably later than Christ was knocking around, wasn't it?
Well, what method of transport do you suppose Marco Polo took?
Horse.
Yes. And do you think they'd invented horses in Jesus' time or not?
All right, point taken. Okay, right.
Quite well made, I thought.
All right, well, getting back to the codger argument, if you've ever driven during the rush hour, you'd know that you rarely, if ever, get out of third gear anyway. So having someone in a hat pottering around at 30 miles an hour is hardly going to make any difference, is it?
This is a different argument. I'm talking about quantity of traffic on the road between 7 and 9 in the morning. Anybody who doesn't need to be on the road between 7 and 9 in the morning shouldn't be on the road, correct?
Yeah, but when I drive over the M25 and see it gridlocked at that time just about every morning, I mean, what percentage of that traffic do you think is old age pensioners?
7%. 7. Those aren't my figures, those are government figures.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, 7. All right, so the traffic would be 7% better.
Yes.
It's still pretty bad, isn't it?
Agreed, but what are your suggestions, pal? Easy to be destructive. How about being creative?
Well, I think maybe they should just increase the tax on petrol unless you're a commercial vehicle. If you're a commercial driver,
people have been bashing weak ideas like, oh, for goodness sake, go away. People have been bashing around weak ideas like that. That Transport 2000 lot, they're always lobbying for that one, and everybody knows that won't make a blind bit of difference. You can't use tax as a social lever, mate.
Well,
You've got to introduce legislation.
I don't think banning old codgers is going to be any more effective, apart from anything else.
Have you ever been on a bus at 7:30 in the morning?
Probably, but I don't remember when.
Probably.
Well, I've had a car for quite a while.
Well, codgers aren't allowed on the bus before 9:30 in the morning, and no one minds.
What?
Did you not know that?
No. That's quite interesting.
Did you not know?
Is that a fact?
You really do need to get out and about more. Don't you have any elderly relatives, or don't you care about them?
They're all dead now, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But they're not allowed on the bus before 9:30.
Old people are not allowed on the bus before 9:30 in the morning.
How do they tell whether they're old enough or not? What if you're kind of borderline? I mean, what's the barometer for whether the conductor lets them on or not?
It's their age, Mike.
Yeah, but I mean, what if they lie? What if they say, oh, actually, I'm 49 or something?
If they lie, they've got to pay the full price.
Oh, I see. They're allowed on the bus. They don't get it cheap.
That's right. And that's exactly what we're suggesting this afternoon should happen on all forms of transport.
Yeah, but, I mean, don't forget, a lot of these old people, they're bordering on senility anyway. Life's hard enough for them without having to remember when they can and cannot take their car out on the road.
You're coming round to my argument, aren't you?
Yeah, but they won't remember, will they?
You've learned something this afternoon, haven't you?
What do you do with them?
You've learned something this afternoon.
No, I haven't. Well, I have. I've learned that old people have to pay the full fare before 9:30, but I still don't think Lennon was a Cockney or that Christ went to Japan.
Richard calls from Cheshire. Richard, you're on Talk Radio. Good afternoon.
Hi, Tom. That old woman on before from Scotland, she wouldn't be moaning so much if she was in her house with burst pipes everywhere, water coming through the roof.
You're a plumber.
And this plumber's on his way on the motorway, putting his foot down, and she's on the phone screaming, "Where's my plumber?"
Absolutely.
And some bloody old biddies in front of them on the way.
Absolutely. Sightseeing.
And, I mean, I get it every day. I'm out delivering, trying to keep the country going, drivers out of recession and everything. And you get these people on the road pulling out in front of you, and going in the outside lane doing 50.
I'm always astonished that there aren't more accidents involving old people at big roundabouts because they don't seem to realise that you're meant to slow down and have a look. They just sail onto the roundabout like a like a super tanker going past the Isle of Wight.
You think one car fits around the roundabout? You can get 3 around there, but they take that straight in the middle and you can't get off. Like
Joyce Grenfell in that party frock sailing onto the ballroom like a galleon. They just go onto them.
And they wonder why you're moaning at them and beeping at them, shaking your fist.
Yeah, what it is they didn't have roundabouts when they learned to drive.
They haven't got roundabouts in America either.
And they didn't have motorways when they learned to drive.
No, they didn't.
And they didn't have the gear stick on the floor.
No. And the cars these days, although they're faster, they're a lot safer. They can stop quicker.
Thanks for your call, Richard. Free call 0500 1053 89. This afternoon, we're taking a look at transport between 3 and 4. A system which was implemented some years ago and works very successfully with public transport in the mornings and during the peak hours before 9:30 in the morning and between 4 and 6 in the evening. Certain restrictions are applied, and it works well. It's a carrot rather than a stick. Older people are allowed to travel more cheaply, provided they stay away from buses and trains, when the majority of people have to go to work, have to go to school. Free call 0500 1053 89. The idea that we're discussing this afternoon is that this scheme could be extended to include ordinary automobile transport, so that people aged, shall we say, over 50 would be barred from using their cars until, say, 10 in the morning, when there would be a window for them to use their car just as freely as anybody else, between 10, say, and 12, and then again from 1 until 3. And then they'd be allowed to climb back into their car and potter around again from, say, 7:30 until 10 at night. In return, they'll be allowed privileged parking at supermarkets and hospitals and so forth, and possibly preferential rates at NCPs, and possibly when it comes to purchasing petrol. Road tax also would have to be slanted in their favour. Claire calls from Maidenhead. Claire, you're on Talk Radio. Good afternoon.
Yeah, hi. I'm totally outraged that you and the other chap who have just been on have connected the bottle to talk about people who are old at 50 or 55. Old age people, I mean, to me, old age is 70 and over. It's not 50 years old. You get company directors who are 50 years old and 55, and they should be allowed to use the road, shouldn't they?
Well, they usually have chauffeurs.
Well, no, what if they don't?
Well, they're not very
a
good
lot of them don't.
They're not very good company directors, then, are they? They haven't got a chauffeur.
I just think it's outrageous. I mean, well, how can
Andrew
you say
Neil's got 2 chauffeurs.
How can you say 55 is old?
Well, if you're 55, then you probably took your test 35 years ago.
Yeah.
Motoring conditions have changed.
Okay, so they make them have another test then. Doesn't mean to say kick them off the road at peak times. What I
When you're 55, you don't really want to be in rush hour traffic.
Of course you do. You're working, for God's sake. My father's still working.
But he doesn't want to.
Of course he wants to work. He gets his pension at 67, so of course he's working at 55. I think you've got a lot of disrespect for people who are 50 years and over.
I'm only trying to help.
No, you're not trying to help. The way you can help others is by saying the government is giving tax incentives to companies who all introduce flexi hours. Now, if we all start at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, of course there's going to be less rush hour at the usual peak time, i.e. 7 to 8. Why don't we introduce flexi hours? And then we can compete with the European countries in the future.
And why don't you write to the Ministry of Transport and complain about the prejudice which is already up and running on public transport?
Well, I just can't believe that the government has not even thought about implementing flexi hours to all companies.
But the practice that we're discussing this afternoon already exists with buses and trains, and that doesn't seem to bother you.
Well, no, I don't, I mean, if an old lady wants to go out shopping, why not? But then, how can you say an old is 50?
This is your problem, isn't it?
Yeah,
What
this
age
is a real problem for me.
It is. What age are you?
37.
37?
Yeah, and I have a lot of respect for anyone over my age.
What year were you born in?
61.
61?
Yeah.
I see.
You don't believe me, do you?
No, I don't.
You think I'm an old woman?
I do.
What's your problem? How old are you?
45.
Well, you've got 10 years left, and they'll be bumping you off into the old age pension home, wouldn't they?
I'm not suggesting
wheelchair and everything.
I'm not suggesting that the age at which this begins is 55. You haven't been listening carefully.
I thought the whole thing was you said old people.
Yes.
About 55 years of age.
No, I didn't say that at all.
Okay. My apologies.
I said, can I make it clear? I said 50.
50?
Yes.
So you've got 5 years left, mate, before you get bumped off.
No, not bumped off, before I am denied the dubious...
the way you feel about old people, they all should be bumped off.
I care about old people.
No, I don't think you do.
Yes.
Why don't you
Do you mind if I finish a sentence?
Yeah.
I care very much about old people.
Okay.
Like you. And I don't believe that old people should be made to sit in rush hour queues.
Well, no one's making them. They choose to do so because they're paying their taxes.
I don't think people use free choice very often in their lives in this country today.
Okay, so why don't we just introduce flexi hours? Why don't you let the government or start the government
Where do you work?
I work for police.
You work for police?
Yes.
What do you do?
I'm a police officer.
You're a copper?
Yeah.
You're on the bill?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, surely you can see the common sense in this. You all know, all you coppers know, don't you, that Crumblies are a liability on the road. You know it.
No, actually, all the accidents that I have ever personally dealt with have been young people, never old. And that's the truth.
Yeah, that may be the truth, and it might be very interesting, although I don't want any of the details, although I know police officers do like to tell people at parties the various details.
No, that's too boring.
Yes, you do. Well, what, more boring than you are? In any case, I can't talk to you any longer because we are, in fact, discussing law and order in the next hour of the programme, so I expect to get some of the wisdom of the boys and girls in blue between 4 and 4:45 on this programme. Steve is our next caller, and he calls from Bristol. You're on Talk Radio, Steve. Good afternoon.
Hi, Tommy. Love your show.
Steve.
Tom, I think, do you know, I've called you on many occasions, but on this occasion, I'm sorry, mate, you've got it wrong. We need old people on the road driving. The world's going too fast as it is. We're going to spiral off to inexistence. And you get the old people, you're driving along behind, there's not a problem. Is getting that to that place, that 30 seconds before, really that matter?
Yeah, I do tend to agree with you, Steve, but it doesn't work like that. When you find yourself behind somebody who is clearly making an issue out of the fact that they wish to drive very slowly, which a lot of older drivers do, because they quite enjoy it when they get angry because some you-know-what is up their backside, as they put it, when you are merely trying to get to the railway station or whatever, quite legitimately, quite within the law, within the speed limit, on time. What happens is they get angry because they want to, but you get angry because you know that you're being deliberately forestalled. Free call 0500 10 53 89. What happens in the post office queue when people collecting their pensions deliberately strike up lengthy conversations with the person behind the glass just to annoy the rest of the queue who have to get back to work before 2 o'clock happens on our roads? Free call 0500 10 53 89. We need to limit the time old people are on our roads. Let's talk to Andy, who calls from Oldham. Andy, you're on Talk Radio. Good afternoon.
Sorry, Tom, I got your name wrong. I totally agree with what you're saying, because I think, being a bus driver myself, some 6 months ago, there's nothing worse in the morning when you, about 8 o'clock, when you're trying to get and there's an old person trying to get in the bus with a Zimmer frame, and you're trying to keep up with time because the traffic's so busy. And everybody's looking, it's just really annoying. It just winds people up. I totally agree with you.
Thank you.
And your last caller, the police constable, I think she's totally wrong. The reason why there's so many young people having accidents, I think it's because the old people are causing them.
Andy, thank you, and you should know you're a professional. Free call 0500 10 53 89. And whilst it's in my mind, we refer to male police officers as Bill, but what do we call female police officers by the same token? Talk Radio, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Tommy.
Pete.
I wasn't going to phone in, but I've just been by my shop window looking out, and there's a little T-junction by us. I've just seen some old geezer in one of those battery carts, sat in the middle as if he's going to turn right, no number plates, no test. What's he doing? They're going to get round it, Tommy. They're going to get round it. If you ban them, there'll be in those electric carts with no number plate, no registration, no restrictions.
I know they're crafty, but we just have to blitz them. Run them in.
Yeah.
Run them in.
I knew he was going to pull out that junction at about 0 miles an hour with cars coming down here at 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour. He's going to pull out.
A night in the cells would soon teach him a lesson.
It would. But they won't get arrested for that, would he?
Well, why not?
No, he won't, though, will he? The police would just say don't do it again, and he'll be up and down here tomorrow and doing the same.
Well, our conversation is beginning to overlap with what we've got planned for between 4 and 4:45 this afternoon, Pete. So thank you for your observation.
Okay.
And I would recommend that you take a listen to that, because the fact of the matter is that our police force have their work cut out dealing with Category A crimes in this country, bank robberies, etc., etc. And yet it's the Category C crimes, if you like, littering, bicycle crime, dogs fouling the footpath. Those are the things which actually concern us most. If I hear that a bank has been robbed, part of me, thinking of Michael Caine in The Italian Job, part of me, I confess, thinks good for you, fellas. But when I see a steaming present has been left outside the front garden gate, that's when I wish I was armed. So how can we help our police force deal with Category C crime? That's between 4 and 4:45 this afternoon on this show. Paul calls now from West Sussex, and we'll speak to him in a moment. You're listening to Talk Radio. You're on? You're on? Yeah, go on. You're on Talk Radio. There's a good argument for listening.
It is my responsibility to enforce all the laws that haven't been passed yet.
Here is Paul calling from West Sussex. Paul, hi.
Hi. I think I found a flaw in your argument. Where I come from, if you actually put all the old people on the road between 10 and 12, you'd actually create a 10-mile gridlock and a ghost time during rush hour traffic.
You live in an area where lots of old people live?
Oh, God, yes.
West Sussex?
Oh, yes.
Well, move.
Believe me, I actually am trying to.
I'll bet you are.
Unfortunately, obligations of looking after the family and so on, and travelling down visiting mum makes it a little bit harder.
Who in their right minds under 45 would live in West Sussex?
I know, it's a dreary place.
Full of crumblies.
Okay. Incidentally, your argument, your thing about Bristol, you should be discounted, the gentleman.
Go on.
Bristol works 15 minutes behind everybody else anyway. I've driven there.
15 years?
Oh, God, yeah.
And give you a call. Free call 0500 1053 89. Stuart calls from Doncaster. Stuart, you're on Talk Radio. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Tommy.
Stuart.
Right, I'm a professional driver.
What does that mean?
Right, it means I drive for my profession is driving.
Everybody who drives to work's a professional driver.
No, that's incidental to their job. I mean, your job is being a talk show host.
Okay, so you've been driving a van for 3 weeks, and that means you reckon you can pull rank?
No. I drive a 38-ton articulated lorry, right? And I've been driving a lot longer than 3 weeks. Right? Now, I actually agree with what you're saying.
That's not proper driving, is it?
Pardon?
That's not driving, is it?
You reckon?
No.
I'd like to see you do it. Anyway, right, what I was going to say
You don't think I could do what you do?
Oh, I think everyone misunderstands us drivers, to be honest with you. Everyone thinks the job is easy.
20 minutes in a cab, pal.
Pardon?
20 minutes in a cab.
Is that right?
I could pick it up quicker than my VCR.
Yeah, you reckon?
I know.
Yeah,
Certain
okay.
of it.
Fair enough, if you say so, but it's not just knowing how to drive your vehicle.
You're up so high, you can't see people in their cars, so you don't know whether you're behind an old person or a young person.
I'm sorry, Tommy, I tend to disagree with you there.
Well, how can you tell? You're too high up.
You reckon?
Yes.
I can see not just a car in front of me and not just a car in front of him, but I can see 10, 15, 20 cars in front of him. I can see things developing.
You can't see who's driving them.
Before they happen.
You can't see who's driving.
I don't need to see who's driving.
You do if you're going to
the
be part of a conversation about the differences between old people's driving ability and young people's.
Yeah.
You're up so high, you can't tell the age of the people driving.
You can.
How?
You can, believe me.
How?
Either way they drive, right? But anyway,
that doesn't work.
You're trying to sidetrack me from what I was going to say, actually.
No, I am just
What I was going to say.
Puncture this ludicrously pompous notion that because you drive one of these great sort of mobile villages around, right, you can pull rank on people like me who also drive for a living.
What I was going to say, Tommy, is what people are forgetting is driving is a privilege, it is not a right. And I'm saying that as a professional driver. If driving was a right, we would be issued with a driving licence as soon as we're born. We're not. We have to take a test for it. So it is a privilege. Can I argue with that?
No.
So, what's the problem with taking old people off the road during peak times, taking young people off the road at other times?
Well, that's what I'm saying, isn't it?
Taking heavy goods vehicles off the road at certain times.
That's what I'm saying, isn't it?
Where's the problem?
Well, that's what I thought you'd rung up about, because you had a problem with that.
No, I haven't. I've rung up to actually say that I agree with you.
Well, you shouldn't have started an argument then, should you, honestly? Caroline calls from South London. You're on Talk Radio, Caroline.
Hello, Tommy.
Hello.
Hiya. I agree with you from the point of view that elderly people can actually be a real pain on the road. I'm actually 22 myself, and I find that people my age or younger are actually the one who are the bad drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously speaking. I mean, don't think I don't go mad when you've got an old sort of guy there on the road, but I just think that it's definitely us who are the worst driver. Good driving comes with experience, and I think you're making a mistake if you say it's the older ones. My second problem is that if you're calling old from 50, I mean, I would agree with saying, okay, there should be a sanction on older people using the road at certain times, but if you're doing that, I would have to say then you're going to have to do that to the youngsters also. But if you're saying that old age starts at 50, and you're going to stop people from my age or under, let's say that's 25 and under using the roads, you've got people from 50 and plus not using the roads, 25 and under not using the roads. So you've got people between 25 and 50 using the roads. I suppose that would be bliss, but who exactly are the roads made for? I mean...
Anybody who's over 50 who really wants to be driving a car during the rush hour really does need their head examined, don't you think?
No, I don't
Anybody
think so.
at all
I just
who wants
feel
to
it's so weird to say
Anybody at all who wants to drive in the rush hour wants their head examined, don't
well,
you think?
Well, it's not a matter of really wanting. I mean, I'm often stuck in traffic, not because I want to, just because you want to get somewhere else. I mean, how else are you going to get...
But you're 22, and so you haven't made very much money, and you don't have that you're probably quite poor, and so you don't have a chance to jack it all in, do you?
In what way?
Pack in work and go and live in the Algarve.
Well, yeah, I suppose so.
But if you're 50 and you planned it right, then you ought to be able to do that, and that's what we should be how we should be encouraging people to think and plan their careers.
Well, you know, that's, I mean, sort of idealistically speaking, you know, that's never going to happen. But what you're really talking about is that it's the older people who are causing the mess on the roads. And I feel
No, that isn't the case at all. That is a factor, but we do need to find ways of improving the traffic flow, particularly...
Yeah, but I personally feel that it definitely is the youngsters. I agree. You know what I think? I think that it's the older people that are the slow drivers, and it's the younger ones that are the dangerous drivers.
Neil calls now from Glasgow. Neil, you're on Talk Radio. Good afternoon.
Yes, how you doing, Tom? Good
Neil,
afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
This talking about taking older people off the road after they're 50. Where does this stop? This is the thin edge of the wedge. I mean, are you going to say after they're 60 they're taking too much space up in the pavement? Get rid of them?
Well, since you suggest it, Neil, it's not a bad idea, is it?
It's terrible. Personally, I would say take it the other way. People under 25, don't let them on the road. It's a statistical fact that they are the age group that cause more accidents.
Yes, but old people don't need to be on the roads before 9:30 in the morning.
Right, okay. Why, if they want to go into town, how do they get there? Bus or train?
Well, they don't need to be in town before 9:30 in the morning.
But if they've got a job. And I think they'll find that a lot of bus and train drivers are over 50-year-olds.
If they have got a job, they're taking away a job from a young person who needs it more. If you're 22 and you've got a young family and 4 mouths to feed, then you need that job.
Come on, get real, Tommy.
By the time you're 50, you ought to have made your mint.
Yeah, what colour's the sky down there? Pink? What planet are you on at all?
And off you pop to the Algarve.
Yeah.
And Neil, I like your idea about limiting the amount of time that old people are out on the pavements as well. Thank you for that.
Right, cheerio.
I'll get a team working on that one.
Right, cheerio.
Free call 0500 10 53 89. I'm Tommy Boyd. This is Talk Radio. There's a good argument for listening. We're just pulling onto the drive. The discussion this afternoon has centred on the issue of transport, and we've been discussing whether we could logistically extend a scheme which works well with public transport to Britain's cars, and that is to limit the amount of time and the times when old people are allowed to drive to perhaps 10 till 12 in the morning, 1 till 3 in the afternoon, and from 7:30 in the evening until 10 at night. Val calls from Birmingham. You're on Talk Radio, Val.
Hello there.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm backing you all the way, Tommy, on this one. I don't very often, but I'm backing you.
Thank you.
Get yourself into Parliament. Give oldies like me a pension at the age of 50. Even people like you at 45. We've paid in. I've paid in since I've been 15. Tax, insurance, paid it all.
Well,
now I'm
very
still having to work
for your support, Val, but I have to correct you on one small thing. You haven't paid in to your pension, you paid out.
I've paid my money, they've had my dues, but they won't give me a pension until I'm 60.
They've paid out to somebody else, you see.
That's right, you see. So at 54, I have to get in that traffic jam every morning, 8:10, because I've got to go and earn a crust. You get into Parliament, Tommy, get us a pension at 50, bring it down to 45 if you like. I could have had it 9 years. Wonderful. But no, I'm still working towards a pension to earn a crust.
Gary calls from Taunton. You're on Talk Radio. Gary, good afternoon.
Hello, Tom. How you doing, right? Interesting little discussion you've been having earlier. 50-year-old seems a bit young. What about all these reps on the road that need their car, that are over 50, doing a good job for companies, keeping the country afloat? What do you suggest?
They're not much good, really, reps by the time they get to 50, are they, really?
Not that wealth of experience that they carry with them?
You don't think so? No, they're tired and cynical by the time they get to 50, mate.
Hey, you got there a bit quick.
You need these fresh-faced 28-year-olds.
Oh, come on.
They're the ones who know how to rep, mate.
Is that right?
I wouldn't hire a rep over 30.
Wouldn't you?
I wouldn't.
Oh, right. That's fair enough. Okay.
What age are you?
I'm 37.
And what do you do?
I'm an engineer.
Oh, right.
And I need my car. So I've got another 13 years and that's it.
Yes.
And I'll have to wait until, what time? 9:30, 10 o'clock or something? What about all these young mothers then that jump in their cars and drive the kids to school 1-2 miles? Why don't they walk?
Well, there aren't many 50-year-old people driving their children to school, are there?
No, young mums, I said.
Yes, well, they're under 50, so they're allowed.
They're allowed, so they're allowed to congest the roads at a peak time.
We've looked at this issue in a previous programme, Gary.
Okay, all right, no problem.
a successful programme and a successful set of ideas were put forward. I do think that schools should think about certainly staggering the times at which the different years start in the morning. It's beyond me why they all have to pitch up at 20 to 9 and then all can clear off at 3:30, so you get that massive congestion always outside
Of course you
school.
do. Anyway, we're going off the subject. So when you get to the age of 50, how are you going to get to work?
It was your idea. I'll work from home. Stuart and Lester gets the last word on this one. Stuart, you're on Talk Radio.
Hi, Tommy. You're spot on. I'll tell you how I deal with it. I've got a guy that pulls out regularly on me on a very fast road and pulls out and just potters along. Volvo driver with a hat, you know the sort. I called him up not long ago and followed him to the post office he was going to. Got out and I said to him, if you ever pull out in front of me again with my kids in the back, I am going to catch you up and kill you, And he basically said, you should try where I'm living. You should try living there. And I said, I'd love to live. This is £1 million house we're talking about, But if you catch them up and have a right go at them about it, I think they get a little bit of the message.
Stuart, thank you for the advice. I'm not sure about murder. I'm not sure whether we should go that far, but perhaps we'll look at that in a future programme. In the next hour of the programme, we turn our attention to law and order. I'm Tommy Boyd. This is Talk Radio. There's a good argument for listening.
Don't forget to subscribe and like. Comment too if you wish. Even slap your legs and make a purchase from Ann Summers. But don't do nothing.